Hi guys. So this video is walking you guys through your final essay for the course. I should say your last essay because you do have a final exam, but this is a different essay than what you've written in your first two essays. So this is actually a literary analysis essay, and you've likely done something like this many times in high school where you've analyzed a piece of literature looking at a theme or a metaphor or symbolism or concept within that piece of literature. So you're going to use those skills, use the skills you've learned in writing your arguments and your research essays, but you're writing an argument essentially around a piece of literature. So what you're going to do is create an argument about the short story In a Grove that we read, and you're going to focus on either a character, a theme, or an approach. So I don't want you to do all three. I want you to choose just one of these to help kind of keep your argument very narrow and focused. And I want you to write an argument around one of those topics. So what that means is you do need to have a thesis claim. So you can't just say the character of whoever is very interesting. That's not an arguable statement. What you could say is the character of X represents feudal, the backward, you could say the antiquated ways of feudal Japan, if you wanted to say that. Or they're an antagonist that represents the worst of humanity. Or the character of X is a foil to the character of Y. And here's why that is. So think about, good, solid literary terminology you can use to think about characterization if you choose that one. Things like antagonist, protagonist, developed, round, flat, static, protagonist, antagonist, primary, secondary. There's all kinds of characterization points that you could really look at. If you choose to do a theme, that could be something very specific, like the importance of honor, or the idea of truth versus perception. Or the theme is that truth is an abstract. Truth is not real. There is no such thing as truth. It's all about perception, or something like that. So there's lots of themes you could choose from in this tale. If you choose to look at an approach, you could choose to look at the text through a certain lens. So that could be something like a historical lens. So you could look at, a historical reading of the text, what, feudal Japan looked like and what the function of, honor was in this society. You could do, say, I've had a student do a psychoanalysis reading, and it was really fascinating. They argued that one of the characters, had a psychosis, and here's why. You could also do, say, a gender critique. You could look at the role of gender, and the idea of honor and truth, and how gender plays a role in perception in society. Or there's a million different ways you could look at this text. So you choose one of these three: character, theme, or approach. You choose what's most interesting to you. Just a few things to think about. So if you're thinking about character, think about behavior, think about motivation, think about what that character is doing and why they're doing it. That's really what your argument centers on. So if you're arguing that a character who seems like a protagonist is actually the antagonist, say the husband who was killed, you might argue why. You can argue that he lied to whoever, and this is why. So what are the characteristics that tell you that? What are the descriptions of that character? How do you know these things? What shows you that, say, a character is lying or not lying, or is honorable or is not honorable? Is the character trustworthy? How do you know that? What tells you this in the description of those characters or in the actions of those characters? What do they have to gain or lose? And then what's the background? So think about, the woodcutter or the policeman. What's the background of those characters that would influence how they talk to or how they interact with other characters? The key, of course, is pulling in specific evidence to show these things. So show these pieces of. So if you're going to argue that, say, the woman is lying, you have to pull in a piece of evidence that shows me why she's lying. You have to prove your point. So that means a specific quote that proves your analysis. So you need to do that throughout your essay. And the same thing for a theme or approach as well. So if you're going to do a theme, you think about, what is the reader supposed to get out of the story? What are we supposed to learn as the reader? And then what evidence, what quotes can you pull out that show that that theme is valid? So if you're going to tell me that, the idea of, say you're going to do the theme of, say you wanted to say love conquers all. I might disagree with that as a theme. So you need to prove to me why that is a theme in this text. Show me evidence from the text in the form of quotes that proves to me why that theme is valid. And if you're going to do an approach, think about how those different schools of thought help shape our understanding or of meaning with the text. So when you read the text, you might have a totally different reaction or a totally different understanding of the text than I do. Say you are a history major. You probably understand nuances of it that I don't. Or say you are a psych major. You might see it in a different way than I do. I, as a female, read it differently than a male. So think about how the reader perception helps create meaning, and when you look at the approach. And then if you're going to say that, say you do, for example, the psychoanalytical reading that I had one student do, you need to pull in evidence to show me that this character has a psychosis. And again, that's in the form of quotes. So just make sure you have, all of this is an argument. Even though we're talking about a piece of literature, you're arguing that X, Y, and Z is the way to read, this character or this theme or this approach. That's really the argument that you're making. Like I said, we might read it differently. So you're showing me why your perception of it is valid. So that when I say argument, that's what I mean. That this is an argument. You are proving your reading of the text is the right one. So it needs to have all the parts of a normal argument. It has to have introduction. It needs to have a thesis with a claim. It needs to have main ideas with reasons and evidence. And it's a good idea to incorporate a counter argument if you are able to. So it's not quite as cut and dry as the essays that you've been writing, but in this case, you might read a specific theme in the text, and you might say, now some people may not agree that this is a theme in the text. Well, here's why it is. Or you might look at the approach and say, well, some people might read this character differently or might disagree and think that he's not the antagonist, he's the protagonist, but here's why he's really the antagonist. So that's a way to kind of incorporate your counter argument and refutations as well. So your essay does need to be 3 to 4 pages in length, and it's due on Sunday, December 6th by 11:59 p.m. Mla formatting is required. Everything is checked for plagiarism through Turnitin, and then, of course, minimum page length as usual. You just need to submit your final draft with the bib. If the bib should include the citation for the In a Grove short story. I'm not going to say you can't use outside sources. If you want to pull in one or two, that might actually be really helpful, because I know this can be a bit of a confusing story. So if you want to pull in one or two outside sources that discuss this text, that would be okay with me. And it might help support your analysis as well. Just make sure you include any outside sources as well in the bib. So here's some examples that I've kind of outlined for you guys by character, theme, or approach. So if you're doing character analysis, like I said, your job is to sort of paint the picture of the character that you're looking at. So look for motivation, look for behavior patterns, look at what kind of person that character is and why. How do you know that? And then find good evidence in the form of quotes that supports your claim. So some themes that you could look at: truth versus perception, like I said, honor or virtue, the function of honor and virtue in the story, the concept of love, what is love in this story, the ideas of tradition and rebellion. If you look at an approach, like I said, you could look at a feminist reading of the characters and her role in the story. You could look at a cultural reading. You could look at a psychological reading of a character, or a new critical reading about certain symbolism, say the knife or the sword. And as you think about which one of these three that you want to talk about, think about what you want to talk about with the literature. So what did you find interesting? Was it the characters? Was it the society that they were in? Was it the plot. You're not limited to these examples by any means, but I do encourage you to find, your own interest to write about. You don't need to propose anything with me. You can write about what you want to write about. But if you want to, you're welcome to pass over an idea and I can give you some feedback. Like I said, all parts of the argument should be there, and your final draft is your essay grade in this case. So actually, I do believe I have, I apologize. I have added a outline assignment to help you guys, because I think sometimes students are a little bit hesitant after writing, straight argument essays. They're not quite sure how to transition that into a literary analysis essay. So I think I have given you guys actually an outline assignment as well. So that will actually be part of your grade as well. Again, nice little bit of padding just to kind of help with the grades. But it also does help you break down how to write this literary analysis essay around either the character, the theme, or the approach. So it should help you get a quick outline together, and then you'll be able to pull together your final draft as well pretty easily. And that is it. If you just make sure that this is all submitted on time, because the next day starts your open window for your final exams. And I'm going to be grading these very, very quickly because final grades are due that same week. So you do need to make sure that this was successfully submitted. I don't, unfortunately, have time to turn around and ask you to resubmit. If it doesn't get submitted for any reason, it will become a 0 just because of the timing that's needed with the quick turnaround of final exams and everything else. So let me know if you have questions, but otherwise, hopefully you guys enjoy writing about whatever it is that you choose to write about.